look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Our last guest is Mr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥, Director Innovation and IP Advisory at KPMG, whom you've already heard. He presented their report to you. Mr. Mukherjee has over 17 years of post-qualification experience in Big Four consulting, like I mentioned, and he will also be presenting his views as part of the panel discussion. So I would leave open the panel discussion, and I would welcome questions from you. And there are also some questions which the panelists may have with reference to each other also. So, or should I address the questions? How would you want to take it? I think we'll have the questions for Dr. Sahu first, because I think he has to leave early. So I think I'll take the questions for Dr. Sahu first. Yes, any of the participants also who have questions for Dr. Sahu, welcome to just put them forward in the chat box or in the message. So this is actually a question. We will first go to Dr. Sahu and then Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥. How should an inventor remuneration law or policy be implemented in India, and what kind of stages should there be? So can I request Dr. Sahu to take this up first?
Thank you, Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥, for giving me an opportunity. And I'm grateful that we have excellent panels and we have to learn from all of you. And as I have small request, we have a meeting at 4:30. We are doing some technology transfer assignment at 4:30, so I have to leave early. So my humble submission to all of you is that the topic what we are discussing today is inventor remuneration. So as you know, and as India as a country, particularly the invention innovation, we have a great history. But when we see the quantitative index of invention as a patent index, we are lagging behind. That we have to understand that the ecosystem is although there, but our mindset has not changed towards protectionism. So as far as the intellectual property and back to inventor remuneration, I will just like to give a policy perspective today. One thing is that the MSME may not be able to mitigate such challenge when we talk about remuneration. But I'll give you the small example. Every challenge there is an opportunity, and we have seen in this pandemic also. So as far as as an individual, I will say bitter gourd is always bitter gourd, but bitter gourd has many medicinal value and many things we have to. So it is the time to change our attitude, and MSME has to be strengthened themselves without any support. Every time government cannot support to the MSME, and that too IPR issues when we goes to the MSME. Since I am looking after MSME IPFC center, when we goes to MSME cluster, the mindset of MSME is still they are not accepting the patentability or innovation issues or invention issues. So they are completely lagging behind. And in recent parliamentary committee report on intellectual property right, it has categorically mentioned. And we have been discussing on this issue. So remuneration is nothing but an extra payment. And as far as the top of the salary of any individual inventor. So in India, the benefit sharing mechanism is there. If there is a commercialization, the benefit sharing should be there. And we are transferring many technology of various laboratories in the country. And today also one of the scientists who have developed the technology related to I would like to share the bioremediation. That is a biotechnology technology we are transferring to one of the company, and that institution has a benefit sharing mechanism that 40 or 50% of the share of the royalty will goes to the inventor. So institution should first come out the benefit sharing mechanism, and certainly our friend Sumitraji has come out with the challenge and opportunities for the policy perspective of remuneration. He has already highlighted, because I am not a legal person, but certainly I will say there are many challenges are there to mitigate, and but this issue we must deliberate and we must have to take into the next level, so that it should come as a policy perspectives and also notion in our system of innovation. So thank you, Dr. Sorohi, for giving me opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. I will just take up another question which has come with regards to you, and then we will move on to Dr. Pawar, I think. So, sir, the question is, one of the challenges which has been noted in the survey for inventor remuneration has been the difficulty that small-scale enterprises face certain problems in implementing these policies. And this also came out when the report was being presented. So according to you, what are the possible solutions to work around this issue? And how do we reduce the compliance burden on MSME sector to facilitate implementation of such policies?
Yes, let me tell you, as far as the MSME contribution to Indian growth economy is very well qualitatively and quantitatively it has been reported, but unfortunately MSME has not diversified. And as for the demand of time, we must have to change our attitude towards the policy regime. And we have many more flagship policy of government of India, from self-reliance India to startup and stand-up India and make in India, and many more funding is already put in place in the MSME ministry. But we have to change. And let me tell you, I visit some of the MSME cluster in recent time. Once upon a time, there were around 900 MSME over there. Now it has gone to 400. So point today is that we are not changing our attitude. We are not changing as per the demand of time. And that is the need of the hour. And also one of the most important issues is that as per the NASCOM report in recent time, and also Niti Aayog has already put in place, in the next decade, around 45% of our job will be radically changed, and that job will be driven by the Industry 4.0. So point is that many innovation will come from various geographical locations. There should be a benefit sharing that must be addressed. And plagiarism, imitation rampant. Every second days you are seeing in the media and news, and many of the corona testing, tracking and testing product has been, imitation and this going on. So it is a high time for all of us.
And how can we reduce the compliance problems, compliance burden rather, and at the same time ensure that this sector also we have proper policies for implementation?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity, Nipo. If we talk about remuneration, we talk about only monetary remuneration. But if we see other kind of organization, maybe government institutions, companies and all, there may be other kind of remuneration possible. But if we go and think about a law and try to implement on MSME, in my opinion, it would be very, very difficult task and may not be advisable because if you are inventing something in an education institute or a research institute, you're not going to manufacture the same. But when you are in a small scale industry and innovate something and try to improve your particular product, it may be very difficult to attribute the enhancement of value of that particular product directly. It may not be getting a direct benefit to the company. So in that case, is it the fixed amount possible to be dedicated towards to be shared to the innovators, or a percentage of a royalty? So actually each case would be very different. Each case would be very different in a small industries. So handling that through a very uniform formula would be very, very difficult. See, if we talk about small scale industry and talk about legislation of paying people, so we have a policy of minimum wages, and that's for unskilled people, where you can directly attribute the value of their work. But in case of IP, it would be case to case basis, and I firmly believe that one key will not fit all locks in MSME sector. So I think policy stipulation would be a good idea, where there can be some policy stipulations, and if you put a very high compliance burden on these, I think it has already been covered by Sumantra that it may have issues of overhead, other expenditures, and various other issues also. And then who has contributed how much, the quantifying that also would be very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. So to overcome those difficulty, there can be some mechanism proposed that this must be shared with these people. So the general policies would do, in my opinion. The law for MSME and all, I don't think it would go through. When we talk about policies, in the government institutions, there are policies. Education institutes, most of them are making policies. There may not be harmonization. And when we started this committee, this study, and the inaugural also, I spoke about how royalties and benefits are being shared with inventors in these institutions, where your income is accrued through royalty or licensing, so that you are able to see that particular amount. But if you see, let's say, Mercedes car, if you made an innovation, how much value it has enhanced, you really don't know. And that's where issues, even the license value, and like electronic equipments, and which are part of standard, and that particular equipment goes into automobiles, and people are seeking royalty over the whole car and all. So there are different issues faced at very royalty or a very valuation of intellectual property rights. So sharing with inventor, post monetization, particularly, as Dr. Sumantran said, there is no post monetization sharing mechanism. So that can be in a percentage or equitable share can be decided by the company. Though there has to be freedom available to these owners of MSMEs or owners of a company. So too much of meddling in the business, I believe, can be a counterproductive exercise. So we have to propose something which is a very balancing with the interest of individual innovators, as well as those owners of those MSMEs and companies and institutions in the government. So the balance approach. But I did not see. Sorry, I joined a little late. I did not see what are the proposal for this proposed law. So I missed it. So if there is something, then we can discuss further on that. So these are my views.
Thank you, sir. So I think the solution lies in having probably policy interventions rather than strict letter of the law, because
legislative approach would be counterproductive, in my opinion, because see, situation, each case is different. Situation in each case is different.
Thank you, sir. There is another question which I would like to put to you. The issue of inventor remuneration law. When we were to make such a law, when we were to implement such policy, what should be the various phases, or what should be the various stages, how we should go about implementing it?
I believe that it depends on nature of organization where inventor works. So accordingly, we should propose a policy stipulation. So that's very important, the profile of innovator. So he's supposed to do R&D work. So in that case, they have different mechanism of remuneration. Like if you're working in a government R&D institute, so if you have 20 patents, you were given a few 100 crores of fund to do a further research. If you're working, let's say in IIT, if you get a funding of 10,000 or 100 crore, 20 crore may go to your account directly before you are actually come up with an IP or not. So there are different policies. So pre-IP generation remuneration, post-generation with the new projects and new process opportunities are provided to them. Maybe if you're in a small company, there may be foreign training would be a remuneration, may not be a monetary one. So it is also a choice of innovators. And I think we should take a survey from inventors, what they really want in the form of remuneration, and accordingly we should design. See, if as a researcher, if you want a larger research projects as in remuneration, so that will brings you a lot of money in a different form and different policies. May not be directly the royalty coming out of those patents. So if private company funding projects to a government R&D institute, in that case, who will own intellectual property rights, and how remuneration to be shared with inventors? Inventors may work in both the kind of organization. Both the organization will have a different policies. So that's where I think some amount of harmonization is possible. Some amount of harmonization is possible. So in what kind of collaboration, general guidelines can be put in place. Like in Ministry of Science and Technology, I said the last time also that up to 25% can go to inventors, and others were allocated to different like patent fund and laboratory, etc., etc. And that happens when government funding goes to government R&D institute. When it goes to private, there may be a different mechanism altogether how it goes to inventor, because who will be owning intellectual property rights, that's very, very important.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you very much for your views on this, sir. We will just be coming back to you. I would now move on to Mr. Rao. Sir, what according to you would be the most equitable method to calculate the inventor remuneration? And should this kind of remuneration be variable? Should it be fixed? Or like Dr. Pawar has just mentioned, there could be various kinds of remuneration apart from simply monetary. So can you just share your views, sir?
Thank you, 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥. And I totally agree with Pawar Saab, whatever he has said, that the inventory mechanism can be monetary and non-monetary. But I have one particular question after this whole episode. I have been a part of it. We are first talking about inventor remuneration, and then we have taken up cases where existing company, where the product is already there, and when you do inventor remuneration there, is it to the product the inventor remuneration is there? Because, for example, let us take that Manuji was there. He has told about Mercedes. If somebody is working on Mercedes and they come with some improvement or innovation, so who owns that particular invention? Basically, every company policy is that the employee working for that particular product, the entire IP is related to that product and to that company and not the employee. Then revenue sharing and benefit sharing comes. For example, take my company. I am a small SME and my innovation is in burner system. Here, I am the inventor and the process is mine. And inventor remuneration here is to the promoter itself. And promoter is already part of the process itself. And that particular product is getting invented. Becoming a product and reaching the market. And Yashwantji has beautifully said that when it comes to larger perspective of remuneration, and if it is a large organization and the company has recognized that this is a part of invention, if they have taken the for example, let us take the example of Mercedes again. There are several components there, right from the steering wheel or the ignition, and so many innovation can happen outside their company, and they are borrowing that particular innovation or invention and incorporating in their car, whether the person is part of the company or not, because he will continue his innovation in that particular area and improvising the invention. And if, for example, A has invented some new component and the company has replaced the A with B, and A has again worked with company and has not worked with the company, is a separate issue. And how do you address that remuneration or reward is a different process. And if C comes tomorrow and makes a product better than A, and the inventor is different, whose technology is absorbed, how do you go on assessing the value at different stage of time? And it becomes a very complex mechanism to value the options and then go on incorporating the inventor's remuneration and the reward both. That is what I personally feel. I'm little confused from the topic itself, that inventor remuneration and reward is with respect to, it changes according to the size of company. It's different from a product company which is based on invention itself, and is different from the product company which is based on the basic mode of transport. For example, the car which was shown by the Mercedes as the first car and today's car is totally different. So several invention has been absorbed in that. I still don't know how Mercedes has absorbed the transformation and how they have paid remuneration in different stages of product development. So this is what I feel. It's very complex process, and we cannot have a one single door for making a standardized policy for everyone. And it has to change according to the nature, type of process, type of product. The inventor remuneration goes on changing. I feel it is little complex, and I totally agree with Panwarji that the least government comes with policy and starts implementing it, start more getting, being a bureaucrat, I know that it gets more abused, and the how to compliance, and that becomes a headache for a corporate or a small enterprise, rather than assisting them to do a better process and make it as a better compliance. Compliance itself can become nasty in the process of implementing. So I feel, when rightly said by Panwar sir, that when there is already a minimum wages act which is inbuilt in the system, and minimum wages act is not in control with the industry, it is in control with the government. And when the minimum wage act itself goes on going up, then little is left to the entrepreneur to give incentives also. This question also has to be taken into cognizance when you are designing the remuneration. So monetizing the benefit to the company, and then if there is a mechanism to assess the monetization and move forward, then you can definitely evolve a policy. But again, it is unique to that particular enterprise, not a common platform for all the you can say corporate across the stream of business. So I leave it here little, because I personally feel that it is not possible to evolve a common standard inventor remuneration, because there is a very thin line between inventors during the process of product development, who goes on changing in the process, and it is literally very, very fluid and dynamic, and we don't know at which stage. For example, there was a topic also I heard that we have to reward a person from, I think, 𝘬𝘪𝘳𝘴𝘵 in his slide, that that you have to reward people who have already benefited, people who are already in the organization. How do we keep track of people who have left, who has contributed? Or these are challenges I feel for the industry itself. How will you evolve a policy? I'm little confused. I'm sorry to say this, sir, but I have learned a lot in this particular session. And thank you everyone for giving me a chance. Thank you, NIPO, and thank you, panelists. This is my view.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for sharing the perspective of a successful representative, a successful innovator from the MSME segment. So, because like we've seen, there are particular issues pertaining to this particular area. Moving on, I would now like to request Mr. Rawat, and the question that has come up as at what point during the journey of the invention should reward be distributed? Now, like it was being asked previously, also it has come up that it does take sometimes for the invention to get commercialized. So various people may have worked in the organization and may have left. There may be various current employees, and conversely, there may be some future employees who may come and join in at a time when the commercialization takes place. So should they be compensated because they have not done anything for that particular innovation? So when does this journey begin, sir?
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘳𝘭𝘺. So what we have seen, invention generation itself and converting to patent and converting to innovation, it's a long process, at least 3 to 5 years. It's a long journey to bring an idea, innovative idea into production. So, and if you want to have a reward process, why we are talking about that is that we are trying to give some kind of ownership, some kind of appreciation to the inventors who has really contributed. So all the patents, all the innovations are created by human beings, whereas organization is like a legal or a virtual entity, but it is the people who innovate, and we are addressing the needs of the people. That's why it is inventor remuneration not a owner of the IP, the company remuneration that we are talking about. So here, from our experience, we experimented in the last 5 to 10 years. Typically, I have also seen that in companies, when the patent gets filed, at that time, it's also a good milestone because not all inventions get filed as patents. Not all employees who are paid salary, they are inventors. So it's a lot of selective things. So if you are able to cross that milestone of filing a patent, it deserves an appreciation and maybe remuneration at that stage. So we are talking about 3 stages. What is at the time of filing a patent, at the time of granting, because also 40 to 50% patent applications will get granted. And then the most important step is commercialization or converting to implementation. That's also a very important milestone, but very few inventions reach that stage. So it's equally harder as we go through that. So if we are talking about reward policy, it is, I think there are 3 factors which we have to take into point. One is that reward should be timely. So we should not be unnecessarily delayed the credit where it is due. Second is that it should be also proportional to how difficult it is to achieve and what is the kind of impact it is creating to the organization, so that we can talk about benefit sharing. So all these 3 stages we have done. And there has to be a balance, in my opinion. Why? Because if we are having remuneration at the filing stage and not other stages, and Sumantra told that, that is the reality right now, they will give at the filing stage when they come. So it will lead to the patent race where regardless of the quality, focus would be on how many patents I can file. So they will just reach out to the idea and then they will reach out. So that's the quantity of patents. If we are looking at the grant stage, then maybe we are talking about some quality, that yes, inventions or patent applications should have enough quality so that they are also can be granted. And the third stage is the value that the invention is giving to the company, to the industry, or to the nation as such. That's where, when the commercialization happens, that's where these patents are also going to the startups also, or the companies also getting benefit. So that's a value. So combination of, and we need as a nation both quantity, quality, and the value that the IP is creating to convert into innovation. So if we are sharing those rewards in those proportion, the more should be there for the at the commercialization stage. And I agree that it may not be just be law, but also maybe a policy. But if we involve them, we are giving the due recognition to the inventors so that they feel that a part of the company. Just like we talked about the Minimum Wages Act, we talked about the salary that is there, and we see that on many good organizations. There is 2 components generally we see. One is a fixed component of a salary, for example, and there is a variable, which is a performance linked. So it's also something which remuneration or whatever additional payment you give, it's also a fixed, maybe at different stages, and variable, which is at the commercialization stage. So that's what we might take. So balance it out and have it at all 3 stages, because we need both quantity, quality, and value.
Thank you very much, sir. So I think the way forward is probably to have an administrator and maybe certain parts of the filing stage, certain parts of the grant stage, and so on and so forth. So, so there is another question which has come for you. Because you have a presence in different countries, you're doing R&D in different countries. Countries like China, Germany, etc., are giving monetary rewards as part of inventory remuneration. So, what should be the approach that should be taken in India? Should it be monetary, or as has been suggested previously by others like that the combination of monetary and non-monetary, or the comparison that you are seeing in terms of inventor remuneration across nations wherever you have a presence. And there are nations like I mentioned, Germany, China, Japan, where there is national legislation to support the inventor remuneration.
Exactly. So we saw all these laws in these countries have been focusing only on the monetary aspect of the remuneration. So this is important because what we are doing is we are not, organization is not going into loss if you are sharing some of the benefits. But, we are making the inventors, the stakeholders, and of course, companies, not just companies, the countries where such law is already present, they sure have seen the benefits. That's why the law has been introduced. In some of the countries, it is just in the past 10 years and more receptivity is there. So, but of course, we are talking about the policy level here. And in my view, we need to balance the rewards with the recognition. Reason being, definitely rewards is one form of appreciation. Recognition is another part. And if you see the Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid, if you remember, so at the base thing is, of course, the basic things like that will be the salary, the money, and all that. Everybody requires that. And at the top of the pyramid also, we have social needs, the recognition that also comes, which will come from the recognition part. So in India, if I have to say what we have implemented here, we have done both. So as per company policy, we will give, of course, some monetary rewards that associated at different stages at filing, grant, and also at the implementation. But simultaneously, we will make sure that the inventors will get recognized at the company level event through certificates, trophies, showcase, virtual hall of fame also we have created so that we make them heroes. And this has a very strong impact on the culture of innovation, which is actually required. Why should we innovate if we have a culture of innovation? Definitely, recognition plays an important role. So both monetary and non-monetary recognition and remuneration would be required.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roth. Moving on, I would like to address certain questions to Mr. Mukherjee. And again, the same issue has come up, so we would like to know your views as well, because in a way you are the author of the report. And so what is the best way forward? Should we be following the path, as Mr. Roth was saying, that companies which are having only monetary, countries also, which are having only monetary rewards for inventor remuneration, or can other things like recognition and other non-monetary factors also be considered?
Thank you, Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘳. So I feel that when you talk about a policy being implemented by a government, in my view, the focus should be on monetary primarily, and that's what we have seen being followed by the other countries as well. Now, what we found in our survey report and what the respondents have said for various organizations is that they have already some sort of mechanism which allows their inventors to get recognized. And if you look, around 30 organizations we reached out to, and out of them, around 20 of them would have, 20 or 22 of them would have some sort of mechanism already in play, wherein either it can be in the form of a cash reward, or it can be in the form of a certificate or a badge, which is non-monetary, or a recognition or a team dinner, meeting with the leadership of the organization. So there are various innovative ways in which people are trying to increase the morale or incentivizing the inventors towards making better quality inventions for the organization, right? Because at the end of the day, the organization also understands that, as Balwant was saying, that it's the people who will make the difference to the organization. So today, if a Daimler is making such high efficient and technologically advanced cars, it is not an automatic thing which is happening. There are people behind it who are doing it. So as an organization, they have been able to incentivize and motivate their employees in such a way that they are able to generate quality products and inventions or innovations for the consumption of their consumers. Right? Now, there are certain other organizations who are struggling in doing that because of multiple reasons. But this is also one of them wherein, and we have seen this because we have consulted quite a few organizations in India who are Indian organizations, who are global MNCs, who are Indian MNCs, educational institutions. And the way the journey starts is basically people start with the fact that they want to file for patents. They want to look for the quantity of patents being filed without actually looking at the quality of the patents being filed, or the quality, or even looking at the fact that whether those are actually implementable or relevant for the business or not. And I have got many such cases or examples. I don't want to name organizations, but I have heard from their IP heads or the legal heads that they went into the number game and suddenly they are sitting on 500, 600 odd patents and they don't know what to do with it. So at a given point of time, when the organization is maturing, incentivizing inventors at the filing stage or the grant stage is good. But for you to be going to the next level, wherein you have majority of your patents actually helping you in monetizing those inventions and thereby generating revenue for those organizations, you would need to drive your employees towards that behavior to say that, okay, if I am spending company resources and I am doing something for the organization, it better be good and it better be relevant and it better be which will drive my business instead of just showing that I have filed 5 patents against my name. So that's why it is important to have the remuneration across. But from a policy standpoint, again, I would like to say that it is important that we focus on the monetary piece. And as Mr. Rao and Dr. Banwar was saying, I completely agree that there cannot be one policy or one law which will fit all sizes, right? And it has to be a slow iterative process. It cannot be that you implement a law tomorrow and you say that everybody starts following it, because there will be loads of nuances, as you rightly mentioned, and it is not going to be an easy implementation, because what's the point in getting a law even in place if you cannot implement and enforce it and there is no mechanism to track it? So it has to be simple for organizations to implement. It should not be wherein you have percentage to be determined based on the revenue of the product which is being generated, because that will lead to a lot of complication. And we know how difficult it is to identify how much revenue a patent contributes to a revenue of a product. It's nearly impossible to do that. And it gets complicated. I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but it gets very complicated. And who will have the energy and the resources to do that? No one. But then can we not have a fixed slab basis, which some of the countries are having? That, and even if you look at on the filing stage or on the grant stage, companies typically would have a fixed amount being paid to the inventors. Like if you do a patent filing, you get 10,000 rupees, you get 5,000 rupees, something of that sort. Now, is the amount significant? That is a different debate altogether, that whether it will make an impact or will it influence somebody or not in the first place. But I don't think that inventors, and I've spoken with a lot of inventors, they really do work for money as such, but they do really work for recognition. The fact that they're being recognized and the fact that their name is being called out when something is happening. So I think that is which is extremely important for organizations to do, and with a monetary benefit, which also then adds like a cherry on the cake.
Thank you very much, sir. There is another question which I would like to put to you as an industry representative, and which would be the same question that we had asked Mr. Rawat earlier. So, at what stage do you feel that or how should the cake be distributed vis-a-vis the remuneration? So, will you just take that up, please?
So again, I think it is important to do it in all stages so that you can build a pipe for the invention, right? So it's important to guide the employees or the inventors or the innovators in such a way that they do see a path. And there should be more benefit being given to an inventor if an invention is commercialized versus a filing of a patent or any of the IP rights being done. That's what I think. Because once you are able to monetize a product, then definitely your invention is something which is very relevant, which is technically very sound, and the organization is directly benefiting from your invention. So that calls for a higher degree of pay or remuneration being awarded to those inventors or innovators compared to the initial stage. And also it is important that how do you distribute, because there will be in this kind of scenario, there will be complex scenarios which will come, right? For example, there would be multiple inventors who are working on a product. There might be inventors from various countries collaborating to develop a product or a solution. There can be an exit of an employee, and there can be a new employee who can be taking over what is being done by the earlier employee. So how do you ensure that you have a proper mechanism to even share all this information or record all this information to be able to understand that you are not doing injustice to anybody who has actually contributed to the invention, but you are not giving them the direct benefit?
Thank you very much, sir. That was, I think, so what probably needs to be done is, both at the stage of commercialization, and part of it should probably be based on the valuation previously, and then based on the life of the patent, we can probably work out some kind of fund. This is just food for thought at this stage. So we'll just take some of the questions which have come from participants, and I'm very happy to see that there is a lot of discussion, so which means the participants have been very, very vibrant in the session. So I think this can probably be best answered by Dr. Pawar. Inventor remuneration is regulated under the categories of mission inventions, non-mission inventions, and free inventions in countries like France. So what are the inherent pros and cons of such a system, and should such a system be adopted in a country like India? So if you could take this up. Dr. Pawar?
Oh, sorry, I missed it actually, sorry.
No, I'll just repeat the question. I think you're on mute, sir. So actually the question is that in French law, there are various categories of inventions like mission inventions, non-mission inventions, and free inventions. So what are the inherent pros and cons of this? And should we have something like this in India?
I think I need to understand more about that before commenting on it. So I'm really sorry to not to.
Sure, sir. I would like to put just one more question to you. There are, even though now the pace of patent examination, etc., has increased, but participants says that the commercialization procedure is still slow. What is it that we can do to improve this process a little bit more?
I think there was a proposal of having IP exchange.
That's right.
I think there were few organizations who were making efforts in buying those patents at a lump sum cost and try to commercialization. So single patent, single product is not the time where we can really attribute one patent to one product. That happens in chemicals, pharmaceuticals, where you have a drug molecule. So you have one patent, one drug, and you commercialize it. But when you go to electronics, there's a bouquet of different inventions makes one product. So this product, invention goes into product, invention goes into product. So now there are issues in these areas where you have to participate in a standard setting process. because invention may be good, it's not a part of a standard, it will not see the light of a day. So based on the nature of invention, we really need to plan how we want to proceed in that particular area. So if we are in electronics or telecommunication, etc., I think we have to adopt this standard route and a patent route, and we have to address issues altogether. If we are in a pharmaceutical area, so we have to pursue the regulatory compliance requirement as well as a patenting requirement. See, if we develop a product after 10 years, we are not able to meet the regulatory requirements, our product will not see the light of the day. So that's why I think it's sector to sector we need to plan how do we commercialization. That's where the centralized mechanism or some common platforms are required. Like a lot of efforts are being made, licensing, executive society and all, and some private firms. But I think at a national and international level, if we are able to set up some kind of IP exchange, where like in the form of a stock exchange kind of a thing, where people put their intellectual property right, auction happens and licenses and commercialization takes place. I think that kind of mechanism is required. And to quote, may not be exchange, but the inventor and the owner of patents also have to come up with an innovative method to really commercialize. Like if you go to US NIH, what they do, they put all marketing, they have patent documentation, everything, but still they have to make a marketing abstract of those inventions. So how it is useful in the process of their production, how it's useful in the process of further product development. So they link their innovations with products of other people and prepare marketing abstract and try to sell. So there's efforts at a owner's level, at the innovators level, as well as maybe government and other agencies can create an ecosystem for commercialization. But if we look at a commercialization globally, this is 3-4 year old data. Most of the commercialization, at 56% of commercialization of innovation happens based on inventor and industry contacts around the globe. So that is the scenario. So how inventor is well known in the industry, how there is linkage, so that works above all other mechanisms.
So thank you, sir. So sector-specific approach and maybe having something like an IP exchange are probably the ways forward to improve this thing. Mr. Rawat, would you like to add something as an industry representative?
Okay, so just to understand the question better, which aspect you want to?
So the question is that even after making so many changes, the process of commercialization is still long. It actually still takes a long period of time to get the technology to the market. So what are the ways forward to maybe improve that?
Yeah. So what I can see from the industry perspective, that it requires a joint effort and collaborations across different entities, because you can invent maybe in silos, but if you have to go to the market, you have to have a right collaboration with the different entities, and that's where to convert to innovations, if you want to make it faster, I think the more we learn, the more we are able to work together, the faster it can be. And of course, one should not be fixed on somebody's own inventions. We have to also understand what is the real need and want of the market. Because if it is commercialization is very slow, maybe the market conditions may not be right, but maybe it is time for us to see what changes we can make in our idea to fix or to satisfy the need of the current market, and see how we can change or pivot the ideas.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. I would just put one more question to you. and to Mr. Mukherjee. Both of you can actually share your views on this. If companies are choosing to remunerate inventors only for patents that are selected for commercialization, licensing, or sale, and only at the stage when the product is monetized in some way, would that lead to some decisive autonomy based on, would the companies amass a lot more autonomy, and, or would it be cases wherein the company would end up, the inventor would end up being shortchanged?
So I would see it as a win-win situation where company is also getting benefited because inventors are also right from the very beginning involved in the process, just like a shareholder. And then as we have seen that the process is difficult, so they are also putting in right effort to see what ideas are coming up, how they can make further innovations to solve the next challenges or the new challenges that come up in the commercialization process, because invention or innovating is a continuous journey where not one patent will get to the commercialization. You have to have a lot of improvements on the way because there is a lot of learning goes into it. So if inventor is involved throughout the journey, I can see the benefit for the company is, of course, the better chances of commercialization. And also, the inventor will also stay with the company more. And in this market where we see that if you want to attract the best talent, you have to provide them more than a salary with some kind of
recognition. So that is where I think what you mentioned about the badge, etc., the graded badge, etc., that comes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Mukherjee, can we have your views, sir?
Sure. So we have to understand one thing, that this is not replacing the current mode of remuneration which is there. So what we are suggesting here is something which is over and above what is currently happening. So an inventor would continue to get the rewards that an organization would assign to them at the time of the filing of a patent, for example, or for a grant of a patent. Over and above, if it gets commercialized, then as of now, what's happening is that they do not get any benefit whatsoever. What we are suggesting is that there should be some benefit being passed on to the inventors as well. So it as Balwant mentioned, it will be a win-win situation for the inventors, and it will not be at all detrimental to the interest of the inventor.
Thank you, sir. I have a question for you again, which is that, is it possible to increase the lifetime of IP assets, let's say patents, for inventors from schools and colleges by the number of years they would take to complete their formal education, say graduation? So supposing somebody who is, maybe a mechanical engineering student, and he comes and develops a flush which is operated by the foot, and so that, people who are disabled may also end up using that flush. So should there be some kind of provisions which would encourage such invention by people who are in maybe schools and colleges or still at the learning stage? Some kind of additional recognition or some kind of other remuneration that can be contributed.
Sorry, I am extremely sorry, Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘳, I lost you because of my bad connection.
No, I'll repeat the question.
I know you actually spoke for quite a bit in terms of explaining the question, but I could not hear. So,
Sumantra, I think we lost you again. Maybe you can.
No problem. I think
close your video and then state. I think that will
that will save some bandwidth. So maybe technology is just being treacherous. Let me instead pose the same question to Mr. 𝘬𝘪𝘳. I think now we've got Mr. Mukherjee back. So Mr. Mukherjee, if you can hear me. I think this reminds me of my
yes, I can now.
Yeah. viewing news channels where you're saying, can you hear me? Can you hear me? So, okay. So the question is that whenever we are dealing with inventors from schools and colleges, and this can be taken by both you and Mr. Rawat, that, what kind of additional things can be done to increase the lifetime of the IP asset, or to give some other kind of remuneration, which is non-monetary, to these inventors who are still in their education days, maybe college or school or whatever, graduation, undergraduation, post-graduation.
Yeah, see, when we are talking about the inventor remuneration policy, of course, we are associating it with organizations or universities, right? And as of now, of course, we are not looking at schools and colleges and that particular stage. Whether to increase the lifetime of the asset or not, that is something, of course, it's not within our purview to discuss on this meeting, because that's more of a Patents Act discussion, which of course is a different ballgame altogether. So I think, yes, I think the point is very valid. Whoever has raised this question, I think it's a very valid point, because in case you have an invention which you come out with at a very young or early age, and then by the time you say get on your feet and you start your own business by that time. But then what I would also imagine is that if you are you're creating an invention right now, and if you're going to commercialize that like 15 years down the line, most likely the technology in itself will become obsolete.
It would have evolved, yes.
Right. So of course you would have to keep on bettering your own technology and move along the life cycle of your product or solution, whatever you are making, so that by the time you reach a position where you can start commercializing the product, you have the latest version of the technology or product that you are using. I think that's one way to look at it, because I would imagine that you will not have a technology that, and today the technology lifespan is very short. It is hardly 3 to 5 years, and not even that in some of the technology domains. So that would be my view. I think it's a very valid question, but it has to be dealt with in a very different way. I don't think that the inventor remuneration point would apply here.
So I can add to that is
yes,
the lifetime of an IP asset. If you see, the law permits 20 years, which is, I think, a fairly long time. Not many patents actually reach that stage.
In fact, if we are talking about, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, sir. If we are talking about technology like mobile phones, it probably becomes obsolete in 2 years. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
So what is important for schools and colleges, and I can see that now there are IP cells, or the faculties and the schools administration or even universities have this thing. What is more important is the connect that they have for that novel idea. If we can have that collaboration or at least sharing of IP with the respective owners, the industry, and that will have a dual benefit, not only to the industry, where the chances of commercialization could be there, and most importantly, to the students who are thinking in that direction, to get a right feedback so that they become more innovative and increase their chances of commercialization. And of course, it helps them in the career, in making them, they can also be the entrepreneurs based on that. And it's easy these days, due to the government policies, to get required funding from the government or from the industry now, if you have an innovative idea which makes business sense. But they need to file it as soon as possible. Otherwise, they lose the priority date.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. And I think that was a very, very erudite group of scholars that we have had, very erudite group of persons that we had, experts that we had. And I personally have learned a lot during this discussion. If there are any further follow-up questions that any of the participants may have, you're welcome to email us at the NIPO email address, which I mentioned previously, and we will try and get you the answers from the respective experts. I have thoroughly enjoyed moderating this session. And I think with these words, I will hand it back to Captain Fatima for further proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Parikshit. It was indeed a learning session. We've learned not just today, but throughout the journey while we went across reports and a previous. Taking this opportunity, I would firstly like to thank all our attendees who helped us throughout, with their questions and as we build up. We would like to thank our moderator for this event, Dr. Parikshit 𝘬𝘪𝘳, esteemed panelists, Dr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘪𝘳𝘪, Dr. B.K. Sahu, Mr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥, Mr. 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘪 𝘬𝘪𝘯𝘥, and Mr. Hari Rao. And a special vote of thanks to our keynote speaker, Mr. Manu Sal. NIPO would also like to thank KPMG India for their kind cooperation through the journey of this project and a supporting partner for this event, IPTSE. Lastly, I would like to thank our very vibrant and engaging audience for their kind participation throughout the event. For any questions, you can reach out to the NIPO email which we sent. For attendees, we will be sharing a participation certification for it, and you can also find the reports in our upcoming link for the email. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Record.